Good morning. It is Monday, September 9th, in the unholy year of 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, another school shooting, a regular occurrence in the United States, tragically. This one involving a 14-year-old boy. And that is a boy. And his father has also been charged, as the father allegedly was the one that gave him the firearm for his Christmas present last December. Now, there's a lot of contradictory information coming out about this whole tragedy, and it is a tragedy. First off, the 14-year-old's going to be charged as an adult, and the father's going to be held account of him being a parent. There's an awful lot of people that are immediately jumping on this tragedy and trying to assign blame. And what I'm going to urge everyone to do is just wait and check out all the facts. There's all sorts of contradictory information. I'm not going to repeat it here as to what the kid's motive was, whether or not he was mentally ill, what relationship the father had with the mother, what relationship the father had with the son. We don't know anything, really. We're living in what is now being called by some a post-truth world. This is a tragedy, as all of these incidents are. And in order to get to the root of all this and solve them, we have to go for the truth, and that requires taking a step back and just turning off the emotion. And that's something that goes on a little bit too much, in fact, a lot too much these days. Of course, there's another shooting. As of this morning, they're still hunting for a man who shot up a highway in Kentucky, basically hit 12 vehicles, injured several, none of which were injured fatally, at least not yet. They're being described as stable. And the cops are hunting for this individual who's been identified as a man in his 20s. They're still hunting him down in the woods, apparently, as of this morning. What is driving people to this level of madness? What is the reason? What is the cause? When I was in high school, there were high school shooting teams, hunters, kids who went out hunting in the morning with their fathers, would bring their rifles to school and leave them in special locations. In fact, when I was in high school once, my history teacher, I believe it was in my sophomore year, was obsessed with the Kennedy assassination, and one of the kids had a Mannlicher Carcano of the same kind, and he was allowed to bring it to school, and everyone was able to see if they could beat Oswald's time. Really, no. Kid was able to bring a rifle into the classroom for demonstration purposes, and that was in the 1970s. And no one was worried about anyone shooting anything up. What we need to do is to take a good, long look at ourselves and our society and where everything went wrong, because it certainly did. Firearms are not going to disappear from the American scene, no matter what any liberal, woke, progressive, whatever you want to call them, think. They're not going to vanish. They're not going to be confiscated. It's just not going to happen. So it's better to find the root cause of why people are doing this and not just blame weapons. In other worldly news, the infamous Boeing Starliner has returned to Earth, and it did not crash. It did not burn up in the atmosphere or otherwise meet any sort of tragic demise. It landed in the desert and was recovered, and they're going over it to see why there were issues. There's one small problem. There were no astronauts on board. Those two individuals are stuck at the International Space Station until early next year. And even though I don't know if it was NASA or who put on the press conference, it was hard to understand who was there. Boeing was not, which was interesting. NASA's still trying to put a smiley face on this whole thing, which is somewhat repulsive. And if you want to look at their press conference. You can dig it up. But the thing that's very tragic is astronauts and people who are sent on such missions are trained specifically for certain types of missions. And these astronauts were not trained for long-duration space flight. That might have been a small part of their training, but it was not their primary mission. They expected to be back within a couple of weeks. And now they're going to be up there for better part of almost a year, not a year, but a good 9 months or so. They won't be coming back till February. That is going to be hard on them. That is wrong. But the fact that this spaceship came back and it was fine shows exactly how incompetent the U.S. space program has become, or at least those that are participating in this corner of it. They are going to be rescued by the Dragon spacecraft of SpaceX and Mr. Elon Musk's operation. There are a lot of people that are concerned that they're not going to have spacesuits that fit them because the Dragon spacecraft uses different spacesuits than the Starliner. That is not really a big issue. The Apollo astronauts came back to Earth wearing just jumpsuits. They didn't have their pressure suits on. The reason why is they were splashing down in the water, and if you splash down in the water, you're wearing a heavy spacesuit. Well, it usually won't go very well, as Gus Grissom almost found out back in the early 1960s. There's a story there for you, but you can research it if you want. I don't think that's a big issue. The issue is these people are stuck up there. They're being given things to do. They were not trained for that particular mission, and it's very unfair to them. The U.S. has to redirect its level of competence because it's quite obvious that a lot of people got involved in that project who were not up to the task. If 50 years plus after we were able to send people up in what was basically the same sort of spacecraft, and it more or less worked flawlessly except for one time, I think we have to reassess education, training, how people are handled in corporate positions where human life is at stake. It's kind of obvious if you think about it. But I hope the two astronauts up there are able to endure. There's probably a couple of book deals in it for them and possibly a few lawsuits as well. Okay, the other news. The Trump assassination attempt is still being investigated. Nothing much to report there, and no one's really talking about it too much. The other thing we'd like to talk about, though, this morning is the quickly approaching election, November 5th, because it's a certainty that on November 6th there's going to be a lot of anger in this country somewhere. Whichever side does not win, assuming that the election is decided on that day, whichever side doesn't win is going to be very angry with the other. And all sorts of dire predictions are being made about what's going to happen. Suddenly everybody's going to grab their guns and go out and go at it, or there's going to be massive unrest and people are selling generators and survival food and all sorts of wonderful treats. I don't think it's going to be that bad, at least initially. Americans are far too comfortable with their lifestyle. They got jobs. No one's going to give up their job to go out in the streets and battle with police or Antifa or something like that. I don't think it's going to happen. And there is some historic precedent about all of this anxiety of people anticipating that with an event happening, everything is going to collapse. And that was 1989 in Japan, and I was there. And that's when Emperor Hirohito finally shuffled off the mortal coil. And he did so over many months, and it was a very long, drawn-out death for the man. There were so many predictions, mostly from people that didn't really understand Japan too much. Well, they were saying that because he was worshipped like a god during World War II, and there were people that died in his name, screaming Tenohika Banzai, and all this other fun stuff, that as soon as he passed away, a lot of people would go insane and they would commit mass suicide and all sorts of other nonsense. It didn't happen. It was rather funny, actually, in a way. Finally, it was over and everyone was relieved. There were a few people that did off themselves, a handful. It was something that was in the news. Wow, somebody was really crazy, whatever. People don't really give in to fanaticism unless they're really driven there. World War II, they were driven there. But in the ensuing decades, they had calmed down. I don't think the U.S. is going to explode into a sea of fire if President Trump is elected again, or if Kamala Harris is elected. A lot of people will be angry, and it could lead to some very bad places. But I don't think that we're going to see massive unrest, at least immediately. Of course, there's a lot of people out there selling the survival food, selling the generators, selling the water purification systems, selling the guns. Oh, got to have guns and first aid supplies. And this has been going on forever, and Americans love disasters. They really do. They really, really do. They don't like to admit it, but we're very good at it. I mean, if there's a hurricane, we're very good at coming in and rescuing people. If there's a flood, we're good at bringing in the helicopters and the boats. And it's almost part of our DNA to deal with natural disasters and enjoy it and get ready for it and have plenty of batteries and flashlights and candles and food. And I don't buy it. I don't think it's going to get that crazy right away. I think this is just another excuse, similar to Y2K. Remember Y2K? Well, some of you might. That's when the clocks were not going to work and suddenly airplanes will be dropping out of the sky. I was told in high school that I'll never live to collect Social Security. Well, guess what? I have. Or that Social Security will vanish or something. Everyone's always predicting disaster, and it doesn't really happen that easily, and when it does happen, it's usually out of left field, and no one is predicting it. So I'm going to urge people to keep cool heads. Don't worry about things until they actually happen. Focus on your lives. Be attentive to what's going on in the world, but remember, you have a job, you have bills to pay. If you have kids, they need to be taught certain things and be attended to. There is a class of people that want the world to come to a screeching halt and blow up. Don't be those sorts of people. Now, there's one more story I'm going to leave you with here, and this is one that I'm not going to so much comment on as report about, because it's pretty out there. And I've handled out there quite a bit in my life, and this was something that made me take notice. First off, I'm going to just direct you to the YouTube channel Redacted. Redacted as in blacking out something. It's a very good source of news and information put together by a husband and wife team that used to work for Fox News back in the day and have gone independent. And this is about Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, which disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean or thereabouts 10 years ago. 777, a massive airplane, vanished with what some people are saying, no trace. Some people are saying there's been a trace of it, but it's a mystery that has not yet been solved. Now, Redacted a couple of days ago had a guest on named Ashton Forbes, Ashton Forbes, Forbes. He identifies himself as a citizen journalist, which I think is kind of a funny title, but he seems to have really done an interesting bit of mystery solving with this, but it's way out there. The thing is, there's video evidence of it. He is not a stupid man. He obviously has done a lot of research, knows his stuff. A lot of people are trying to debunk him. I looked at it, though, and I found it quite fascinating and very intriguing. And I would ask my listeners to check this out. There's a 1-hour interview done with Mr. Forbes on Redacted. You can find it up on YouTube. And just spend that hour and watch it for yourself. Because if what is true that he's reporting, then we are really in a different world than a lot of us thought we were. But I'm going to leave you, the listener, to judge for yourself. Anyways, that's again Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 on Redacted. It was a couple of days ago. Just do a quick search for it. You'll find it. And that was the interview with Ashton Forbes. And let me know what you think. Not everything is as it seems. That's why it's important to keep your feet on the ground and your eyes open. That's it for today. If you appreciate these reports, please like and subscribe. Please consider a paid subscription. It does help me keep the lights on, quite literally, and the computer going, and that can be a real challenge these days. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I'm up on Telegram, a few other social media outlets. I am not on Facebook and would rather not ever go there again. You can also reach me at the Substack channel I'm on, which is where this podcast originates. And the address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. That's it for today. Be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World must be destroyed. Good day.